Yeah, so today one of the ones that we're looking at, we've got a 2014 Nissan Pathfinder. This thing has a CVT in it. The customer's complaint is when they go to accelerate, the car jerks or shudders real bad. I went for a ride with the customer, and when I drove the thing, it was really, really bad. When I would first start to take off with the car, you'd get some big lurches and jumps out of the thing. And when we got to looking at it, as we got a little further into it, we realized that this thing had some transmission DTCs. However, as hard as this one hit, there was one other thing that I needed to look at in this car before we got too far into it. And as it turns out, the inlet air boot on this car was torn, which means that we can't do any transmission diagnosis until we get that corrected. That inlet air boot is between the mass airflow sensor and the engine. And if that boot is torn, our load calculation for the engine, which we use to shift the transmission, we use speed and load, that load signal would be skewed and can cause the transmission to not operate right. So the very first thing we need to do is get that straightened out and then take a look at it and see if it actually does have a transmission problem. This car's got very, very few miles on it, 138,000 miles. So this one could go either way, but I'm definitely going to take a look at that boot first to make sure that there's nothing happening there. So we've grabbed the repair order. Now we're going to get clocked onto the ticket. I'm going to come over here real quick. I'm going to grab the VIN off it and get it put into my information system here, so I've got the information that I need ready to go. And we'll go take a walk around the car and see what it looks like. Yeah, it looks like it's this one right here. So the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a quick walk around the car, look and make sure there's no unusual or excessive damage to it or anything. I'm going to look at the wear on the tires, see what kind of condition the tires are in. I'm going to look at the tags on the license plate and see if they're due for emissions or anything like that. Looks like the car's in pretty good shape. A few nicks and scratches, a little bit of stuff on the left front fender. Looks like the thing was parked under a tree or something. Perfect. So here we're going to get in. I've already road tested with the customer when they brought it in, so we could make sure we were on the same page as far as the symptom was concerned. I already put floor mats and stuff in it. So we started the car up. I want to check the mileage, make sure I've got the mileage right on the on my sheet. I'm going to put it in gear, see what the engagements are like, if there's any unusual noises or anything. I'm going to look for any warning lights that are on, anything like that. I got a little bit of a vibration or a rumble up in the right front corner. I always make notes of stuff like that. I'm going to call that a dash rattle. Right front. I'm going to look at all the shift indicator segments, make sure that they all light up the way that they should, make sure that our overdrive off button works correctly. I'm just going to get a sense of what the idle quality feels like in gear. I'm going to brake torque the engine just slightly a couple of times. I just want to see if we've got any engine mounts that are starting to come loose or anything like that, if we hear any unusual noises or vibrations when we do that. Then we'll go for a road test. Let's see if we can get the car to do what the customer says it does. I have no warning lights on at all. We'll go ahead and just accelerate normally and get a sense of what the car feels like. Maybe Just a little bit of a hesitation out of it there when I first stepped on the gas. I'm listening for squeaks and rattles. I'm also listening to see if we've got any unusual suspension noises or anything. This thing's pretty tight. It sounds pretty decent. I don't have any gross suspension rattles or anything like that. And we're going to go on about a 3-mile road test just to see where this thing lands right off the bat. So far so good. Idle quality is good. It's nice and smooth. I don't have any unusual vibrations at idle. The customer's complaint on this one is, there it is right there. Car just jerked several times when we went to take off, hit pretty hard. Probably jerked 3 or 4 times. I'm going to slow down and see if I can get a sense of what it did there. Yeah, there's a little bit of a jerk or a surge as we accelerate. Accelerating harder, still got a little bit of surge. Transmission seems to function good though. So I'm gonna slow down here and take off from a dead stop and see what the thing feels like. That's kind of when I felt it back. Oh, there it is right there. Just hit hard a couple of times. There's a complete stop. We'll just accelerate normally. Felt pretty good right there. That wasn't bad. Nothing real exciting there. I'm going to drive over some of these speed bumps. When we go over those, I always want to listen for big suspension noises or something. There was just one hit real hard right there. Oh, there it is. Just right there. I'm about between 8th and a quarter throttle. I can feel the car jerk and shudder. Just hit real hard again. I'm watching the tachometer at the same time to see what the tachometer's doing. If the transmission is slipping, sometimes we can pick that out by looking at the tachometer. We'll see the brief increases in the tach needle. This one's got quite a bit of damping to the needle, so it moves pretty slow. We may not be able to pick it out with just that. I've got a little bit of a waver in the tach needle under a steady state. I'm going to turn overdrive off, make sure overdrive actually goes off. The engine RPM increased a bunch when I did that. Means it's operating the way it should. And I'm going to manually downshift into low range and see if I can feel some engine braking there. Yeah, the car started to slow down when I did that. So it was good. There's our judder or misfire. There's several terms we might use to describe that. It would be a shudder or a chatter, or in the case of Nissan, when we're working on the Nissans, they use the term judder, which is when I hadn't run across until I'd seen it with the Nissan CVTs. So we could call that one a judder also. There again, I felt it several times. This is the same thing I felt when I drove with the customer the other day. And again, we've got a pretty significant performance issue there with it, with no warning lights on. which happens on occasion. When I get it into one spot right there, it really hits pretty hard. So I'm going to drive into the shop. We're going to do another quick observation. I'm going to make a couple of real tight turns right and left and accelerate. I'm going to listen for snapping, clicking from the drive axles or anything like that. Don't hear anything going that way. Nothing going that way. Ooh, there's our judder again, though. So now we'll pull the thing into the shop and we'll take a look and see what we've got happening here. So I pulled it in. We're going to pop the hood. We're going to get a battery tester and a scan tool hooked up to it. It'll take a minute for that wireless interface to connect to the scan tool. I'm going to set a hoist underneath it. Grab my battery tester. We test all batteries on every car when they come in. I test them when they go out, when we do our final inspection. So we get a lot of battery tests. Set that over out of the way real quick. Make sure we get our voltage written down. So I'm going to check the fluid level on the trans here. I'm going to pull this air duct out of the way. I'm going to grab a special dipstick for these. So a lot of people call these stickless transmissions, which isn't entirely accurate. There is a filler tube and a place to get to it. There is a cap here that's a tamper-proof cap. There's a special tool that I've got in my hand that I use to release that cap with. Once we get that cap out, then we can use a special tool that we've got for checking the fluid in the Nissan CVTs. So on this one, I know that this one I'm going to use the red portion of the adapter. This tool actually goes in for two different length dipstick tubes. We've got a short one and a long one here. So this car's got the longer dipstick tube in it. So we have to use this guy. Come down in here. I'm going to see where the fluid level is on this stick. It is right about 12 millimeters there on the end of the stick. I think we're right about here. It's hard to see, but that's where we're at. I'm going to take a wipe of it on a paper towel so I can see what it looks like. This fluid is spotlessly, surprisingly clean on this one. So somebody may have been here recently working on this one because I have really little color or discoloration to that fluid. We're going to do a pre-scan on this thing. I'm going to scan all of the modules in the car at the same time. We don't do just transmission or just engine. I want to see what I have for codes in every single module in the car. So here we've got two obvious codes. We've got a P1800 in the engine controller, which is for the variable intake air system. It has got a variable intake manifold on it. So we've got a DTC stored there. We've got a P17FO, which is a CVT judder code. And that one will be the one that we kind of focus on this and see why we've got that. So I've got that, I've got that. I'm going to do a quick visual inspection under the hood. I want to look at things like engine mounts, and I want to check coolant level. It looks like somebody's done very recently. It's got some new mounts in here. I can see the wrench marks and stuff on the bolts and nuts down there. I want to check my coolant level, make sure we've got our coolant level is full. This one's slightly over full, but I'm good with that. Check belts and hoses, things like that while we're just sitting here. Want to look at the state of the battery. A little bit of corrosion on the battery, nothing exciting. Our charging voltage was good. I looked at that when I picked this car up. And now because of the way this car behaved, there's one thing I want to check on these that I check on every one of these. When I have that buck, shudder, or surge like that, one of the things I want to take a look at is the inlet air boot on this thing. So I'm going to use my mirror here These can be really hard to see, but these will tear back. Oh, there it is. I was able to just stick my fingers right through it back here. Let's see if we can get a picture of it for you so you can see what I'm looking at here. So let me get this mirror in here. I'm going to shut this off briefly so we can get a good look at this. So I'm just opening that split and that air boot up. And that's where we're going to start with this one. Because of that judder, as we start to accelerate with this thing, that boot will open up and close, and that changes the airflow and the load calculation for the engine. So that's why we were feeling some of what we were feeling there. Now, we're going to have to address that before we can really assess the transmission. You can't assess the transmission until the engine is operating properly. Everything that computer-controlled electronic transmission does, in this case a CVT, is all based on load and RPM, and we get all the load calculations from the engine side of the system. So the transmission and engine they're kind of integrated together. They both work together to maintain proper engine RPM and maintain proper load on the transmission. So we really need to make sure that we're doing, that we've got this mass airflow sensor right here is reading right. Anytime we get air downstream from the mass airflow sensor isn't reading it. It's only reading the amount of air coming through the air intake. It doesn't read what's beyond here. So that's going to skew our load calculation on this car, and it can make it do some wild things. So we're going to have to address that before we go much further with this to see what we've got going on here. The other thing we're going to look at, again, I'm going to look at my battery test. It was a 640 amp battery, came right in at 600 amps. I'm good with that. Like I said, there's a little corrosion there, not too terribly bad. Interesting to see. Looks like somebody's been here recently. There's some of these panel clips have been removed and set off to the side over here, but we'll get those. There's a couple missing out of here, but we've got those all. We'll replace those when we get done with this and get it all back together. I'm kind of going to pay attention to stuff as I go up. I'm going to make sure we got a full set of lug nuts on it. I'll check it for steering or suspension play just for grins. Again, all the lug nuts are in place. Listening to make sure I don't hear any unusual noises when I spin the wheels. Brake wear indicators, wheel bearings, things like that. Then we're going to pick the car up. I'm going to start from the back and work towards the front. We're just going to do a quick visual inspection. See if there's anything under here that needs to be addressed that is or isn't related to the transmission. Spare tires in place intact. Car's got good tread. Got a set of Michelins on it. Car drove nice other than the shudder in it. Somebody's been here. I've got some new bolts in the exhaust right here. This is a new bolt. Somebody's had this apart recently, so we want to make note of things like that. I'm looking over here. I see what looks to be a relatively new drive axle. If you look over here over my shoulder, you can see all the grease that's sprayed up on top of that transmission and all back in here. That's from a torn CV boot, not this one. This one has just like real recently been replaced. Whoever did the axle didn't do a great job of cleaning off the grease that was flung around here, but that is what it is. We'll come up. Car's got some brand new motor mounts in it. It's a brand new factory motor mount right there. There's another one back over my shoulder. They've got the vacuum lines hooked up correctly to them. These are computer controlled motor mounts. So they actually change the stiffness of the mount depending on whether you're sitting still or driving down the road. Try to keep these things idling a little smoother. There's another mount down here that's been replaced. This one's been replaced. So somebody just did a bunch of work on this. We got a brand new trans mount. Like I said, somebody just did a lot of work on this. I'm going to look for any leaks that we have. I've got some dampness over here on this side of the transmission. If I look right up here, I've got a little bit of dampness. It's on my glove down along this seam. This is an axle seal that appears to have leaked down here. It's running over here, and I got just a little drip of fluid right there on the bottom of the transmission pan. Now, in this case, we'll have to clean that up and see if that's just residual fluid that was left over from somebody doing something here, although it doesn't look like they touched this axle on this side. So I still want to clean that up, and I want to make sure that I know why and where we're leaking from right there before we get too crazy with it. We'll spray it down with some brake cleaner, and we'll take the car out for a drive. We'll bring it back, take another look at it, and see if that's an active leak that we need to address. But let's see if there's anything else here that we need to be looking at. Again, front, I'm glancing at brake pads, getting a little thin up here, maybe 7/30 seconds, 5/30 seconds, something like that on the inboard pads. So that's definitely something we want to keep in mind as we're looking at this. Outboard's about the same. And just about the same on this one. So we're 5 to 7/30 seconds on those. Our belly pan a little loose here, missing a retainer. We'll get one of those in there to keep that thing from flopping around as this thing goes down the road. That's probably one of the most common noises that people hear, is these things flipping around and coming loose and getting caught in tires and running over them and stuff. So we'll go ahead and we'll come back down. And so we're going to bring this thing down, and we're going to make a couple more observations on it, see if there's anything else we need to do. Like I said, on this one, we've got the P17FO, the CVT judder code, which is quite often just a death sentence for these. But unfortunately, in this case, we've got something else. So I'm going to want to clear that code, replace that boot, and then we're going to send the car out on a long drive and see if that code returns or stays gone. I want to check on this particular one. We have the ability to look at a value for the fluid degradation value in the transmission. They monitor warm-up cycles, load, and temperature, and they come up with a value that gives them an idea what the fluid degradation is like. So we're going to go into CVT fluid degradation. It says here the function check will check the fluid is inferred by the TCM based on drive cycles and history of collected load. If this value exceeds 210,000, fluid service is required. So I'm going to go ahead and look here. And our value is 787, which is somebody just really recently cleared this, because that number climbs up pretty quick if our, since our limit is 210,000, we're all the way down here at 787. Somebody just did a service on this and reset that value. So the other thing I need to do is come in here. I need to look and verify my transmission temperature. We want to really be checking these 170 to 180 with that particular dipstick. We're at 167 right now. So I had a little over 10 millimeters there. I think the spec on this one is 14 to 22 millimeters. Yeah, so we're a little cool, but that will come up. The fluid will expand, so when we hit that 170, 180, this one will be right where it's supposed to be. So I'm good with that. Whoever filled it last time was paying attention, did a good job. All right, so that is our initial inspection on this one. I'm gonna check one more thing here that I always check. Grab my scanner out of here. And I check engine oil on every car that rolls through my bay. This one's a little tough to do. The oil has to run down out of the passages here where our dipstick goes. These are real hard to check unless you let them sit for a few minutes. And I'll check this again in a little bit after it's set. Yeah, it's wiping way above the full mark here, which is not unusual. If we let this sit, if I flip the stick over, we can see it's down here halfway in between the marks. So that'll work good for us. I'm going to call that one full. And we are going to go out for one more road test. This time we're going to take a scan tool with us. I did not have the scanner in the car when I initially road tested it. I usually don't. On occasion, the scan tool can affect the way the transmission operates. So we always do our initial road test without a scan tool hooked up. It's also keeps you from getting distracted looking at the scan tool and looking at the scan data. I want to make sure I'm paying attention to all the little subtle noises and things like that this car is doing. So we're going to put that back there. I don't see anything under here. Air cleaner housing's all intact, sealed the way it should be. I don't see anything under here that would concern me. On another one of those panel clips. Somebody's been working here. Put one there. Just look up in the cowl. Lots of times when guys are working on cars, they'll set tools and stuff up in that cowl. So I watch to make sure we don't have foreign objects up there that don't need to be there. And now we're going to go for another road test. This time we're going to take a scanner. We're going to watch some of the data, see if we can pick out that torn inlet air boot. Scanner hooked up, and we're going to go for a ride, and I'm going to take a look. I'm going to watch the data for the mass airflow sensor and the calculated load, all versus RPM, and we want to see if there's anything unusual about the way that looks. It should look unusual because we've got that big gap in the inlet air boot there. This is the hard part, trying to drive and watch the scan tool at the same time. The scan tool is actually recording all of the data right now, and I can go back and I can stop the recording, save it, and view it later just to see what we've got. I usually drive along and kind of try to watch it without running into anything else. We can sneak around this way. So I don't think we're going to have to go very far to see this. Ooh, there it hit hard. I can see some small fluctuations in the air mass value, but this car actually hit harder than I thought it should with that particular issue. So I'm going to stop right here. I'm going to save the data I've got. I'm going to switch over and I'm going to look at some transmission data real quick just to make sure that our desired and actual transmission ratios are the same. I'm going to pick out a few key pieces of data that I want to look at. I don't necessarily need to see them all. There'll be a lot of data here. Take that out of there. Come down. Primary, secondary, engine speed, slip revolution, pulley gear ratio, and lockup pressure. And we're going to watch the desired and actual pulley ratios and make sure that they stay the same. And they do, they look good. The ratio changes are nice and smooth. They follow each other, desired and actual. Kind of mirror each other. I'm also going to watch the torque converter slip for a minute here and make sure our torque converter slip is appropriate. Looks like we've got 6 or 7 RPMs there under a steady state low load, which is what I would expect to see. Our lockup looks good, so that kind of moves me away. People were fairly certain they had a transmission problem with the car, but I'm starting to suspect that it may be something else, not related to the transmission. I think it's going to be that inlet air boot. I could see some small deviations in the air mass. With the new motor mounts, the engine's actually sitting in there the way it should, so it's not moving a whole lot. When we've got one mount that's torn on these, if the front center mount or that rear mount gets torn, we can have the engine rock forward and backwards and open that gap up in that boot I don't really think that's happening. I think we've just got a small gap in there right now that's causing this thing to draw some false air through the motor. So we're just getting that kind of buck and surge out of it. So at this point, I'm pretty much done with my initial inspection. I'm going to park this one over here, put some notes on the repair order, and let them know we're going to that we need to replace that inlet air boot, and then we're going to clear all the codes out of it. We're going to go drive it again, and we're going to reassess it and see what it works like. I'm 99% certain that surge or buck that we're feeling is going to go away after we've replaced that boot, and we may not have anything else to do. Like I said, looks like the transmission's recently been serviced on this. We might wash that axle up and look for that axle seal leak, see if we need to address that since they've already had the other axle done. We're going to take a good look at that right-hand axle and see what the boots look like on it, make sure they're not going to tear on them. And that's kind of where we're at with this one.
Well, hello, I'm Dave Riccio, your host of the Bumper to Bumper podcast, and I would like to thank you for tuning in. If you want one of your car questions to be answered on our podcast, tap the link in the description for a chance to have your question featured. And while you are there, we would love for you to like and subscribe to see more Bumper to Bumper podcasts in the future.